Hey friends, Dawn here, welcoming you to the Soul Goals podcast and year number 3. This year, we are diving into expanding our perspectives, challenging our belief systems, and working the mental and emotional muscles of our souls. Though still all about growth and connection, this year finds opportunities to hear from people in our communities that have walked a path that might be different from our own, but that ultimately present us with the chance to look at a subject in a different light and learn other ways we could approach challenges in our own world. Let's get to it. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Soul Goals podcast. My name is Dawn. So glad you're joining in today on what I feel is probably going to be one of my favorite episodes. I'm just going to throw that out there, Jarrod, because this is a really valuable episode. It's really one, before we hit the record, we were talking a little bit about the platform of the Soul Goals and kind of where it was based in. And I was sharing with Jarrod that a lot of the reason for starting this platform is to connect people, to let people know that they're not alone in their experience, even though there's a lot of times we feel super alone, but there's 1,000 books written on the same subject we're probably going through. But for some reason, we feel this disconnection. So I wanted to have Jarrod Hoffman on today. And Jarrod is going to talk about us doing the work, the benefits of therapy, and where he comes from. Jarrod is a licensed professional counselor in the state of Tennessee. He's based in Memphis. He does in-person sessions as well as virtual sessions. So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we get into it. He's also a registered play therapist. He is EMDR trained. That's an amazing protocol. If you've not read about that or participated in it or heard about it, please look that one up. EMDR, so good. Jarrod specializes in working with teens, young adults, families, helping young people, the young generation, kind of navigate anxiety, depression, addiction, relationships in general, and just basically the pressures that come along with growing up in the world as it is now, because it wasn't like this when I was, 16 to 25. It was a much different world than what we are facing and what our young people in that generation is facing now. So in an effort to educate us a little bit more about the process of therapy, the benefits of it, breaking it down, unpacking it, what it can do for you when you come into it with an open heart and an open mind, wanted to have Jarrod come on today and talk about his experience, his why, and what it is that he's doing within this generation, what he's seeing within it and how it's benefiting them, and maybe the difference between me as a parent and my daughters who are 19 and 23, and that demographic that he deals day in and day out with and how he helps them. So without further ado, long-winded introduction right there, but I wanted to say all that because it's so great. I love talking to you. Everybody, welcome to the show, Jarrod Hoffman. Yes, yes, yes.
Thanks, Tom. You definitely set the bar high. We got to follow through.
You're going to be great. I wanted to tell you too, since you're based in Memphis, I pulled out my coffee cup, my Elvis coffee cup.
Oh, yes.
I bet you never get that, right? Yeah.
The Elvis mugs, that's definitely the first one I've seen over video. Yes.
Wait, are you serious? Okay. Well, I just thought you're in Memphis. Yeah.
Oh, we get tons of people to coming for Graceland. This is we have a back house set up, former garage kind of, and we did, way back in the day, some Airbnb. It was like pretty much 75% of our guests were coming through and going to Graceland.
That's so fun. I think we did a spontaneous family trip. We were driving through Memphis and we literally had like 6 hours. And I was like, let's go to Graceland. I'm like, what? My kids were young and they were like, what? We had such a great time. It was the craziest, most random, spontaneous thing, but loved it. All right, Jarrod, let's chat. Let's just dive right in. I want to know a little bit about why you decided being a therapist was in your calling, was your passion. Where did that come from for you?
Yeah. So my parents were divorced when I was 10 years old. I found porn for the first time at 11, and it wasn't until 25 years old that I found healing through counseling. So I'm just super passionate about making the gap smaller between those life circumstances and getting help, particularly in therapy.
Yeah, totally. And here's the thing. When did you decide that this is the thing? If you had divorced parents, when did therapy present itself for you in that
Mm-hmm.
gap and that time frame from 11 to age 25? You said when you finally stepped in, like how was that presented to you?
Yeah. So I continued to deal with avoiding pornography. It's everywhere. If you define it a little bit looser, right? Because we can get like, oh, it's this. It's just we're constantly seeing things that are arousing us and trying to get us kind of overwhelmed and frustrated, and all these things. And so there just comes a time in addiction where you realize that maybe you need some help. And I would not have connected that to divorce at the time, but it's certainly all wrapped up together. We can talk about the fact that if I'm working with a young adult, right, I didn't see them at 10 when all the stuff was happening. If they're 25 or 35 or even 50, I have clients who are 50. What age are we talking about stuff? When they were a kid, the attachment issues. And so for me, I was in a job and I realized that I was, going past guardrails that I thought I would never go past. And it kind of came to my attention that this is a problem. I would even call it an addiction that I need to take care of. And, you hear all the stories of the people. Thankfully, I was younger, the people above you that are 50, 60 who never took care of it. And then they ruin their marriage. Their children don't even speak to them. And I was like, I think if I don't address it now, that's just going to be me. And so I asked for a raise from my job and they were gracious. I said, I just want to pay for counseling. That's all I'm going to use this money for. And they were gracious to extend that offer to me. And I got connected with the counselor. Actually, the way I got connected with the counselor was there was a volunteer in the youth ministry that I was working at who was a therapist. And she said, I know the guy. This is the guy for you. And I didn't look at any other websites. I just called that place. I picked that guy and went for it.
Yeah. I will tell you that's so interesting too, because in my past of therapy and finding, like I call her my angel, and I interviewed her in year one, Reba Sloan here in Nashville, and she literally saved my life. And it was the most random yet not random situation of finding her. And she wasn't a therapist. However, she was a registered dietitian, and she was integral in getting the pieces of therapy set together for me because I was very young at the time. I was handling it all on my own. I did not have parents that were plugged into the therapy and didn't understand it, and were quite frankly a little scared about it because there was a lot of misconceptions about what therapy was. But yeah, that randomness that was not random was very synchronistic, how we find our path along the way. I want to kind of go back to something you said about adults, like when we're 50 and 60 years old and we wonder why things are falling apart and we're recapitulating the same situations over and over again, that we can tie that back so many times to things, those attachment theories of experiences in our childhood and where that came from. So I love what you're doing with the generation that you're handling a lot of your work with in giving them that gift of understanding a lot earlier than us in the 50s realm. I think it's important because obviously healing is always a possibility. I don't care if you're 70 or if you're 7, you can always heal. Tell me maybe a little bit about what some of the misconceptions on therapy have been that you have heard as a therapist along the way. Like, what are you hearing people say? I don't want to do that, or that's not really me, or it doesn't make sense, or what's the conversation around that you're hearing, the buzz around it?
Particularly for the older generation, I think it's that I don't need therapy. Why would I need that? What's it really going to do? I have friends. I have people who listen. Go down the list of the reasons why it doesn't really make sense. I would argue that even in the past couple of years of training, I thought it was question asking. I thought it was listening. And that is the relational aspect for sure. But you can tell a decent therapist by, are they just letting you vent? I'm pretty sure I heard that there was actually research around venting doesn't make you feel better. It actually makes you feel worse. And so if you have a therapist who's just kind of like, all right, that's the hour, come back next week and vent. Well, you're not actually doing the work. And so the friends that you might have, while they might be supportive in listening, aren't necessarily trained for noticing those patterns that have, for somebody who's 20, been active for 20 years, or for somebody who's 60, been active for 60 years. There's actually a joke that, and it's not really a joke, that parenting teenagers is going to dip you right back into your childhood as a teenager.
Ooh,
how many times, right?
Drop the mic right there. Yes, totally. Totally. That has happened with me as my kids have aged. It's like when they have an experience. So I've had therapy for off and on for 30 years now. And I used to be ashamed to say
Before
that,
it
but
was
I'm
cool,
telling you.
actually.
I was in it before it was cool. Totally. And I used to be ashamed to say that because it was not cool. It was not the thing that it was almost looked at like a weakness, like there's something, what's wrong with you kind of thing. And luckily, I think our culture is shifting to be open to the mental health aspect about it being an integral piece to be able to heal and move forward. But man, there were times when my kids were going through different phases of their life where I really had to check in with, am I overly connected to my kids? Is it healthy? What's it bringing up for me? And where does this belong? Okay, that's like 5 years of therapy right there, that I just like all the questions that I had to unpack right there. But like, it's a real deal as we are older parents and we look at our children aging and they're walking through these doors. It triggers something a lot of times in us that comes up for us to have to deal with. So how do you handle that? Like if you're working with a family, say that in the family dynamic, I mean, there's 4 of us in my family. There's 2 daughters and myself and my husband. So you're working with us and we all are coming at it from 4 different angles, like shooting darts straight at your room right there. How are you unpacking that so that everybody feels heard? Everybody feels attended? Like, what does that look like?
That is super tough. I think all the time, should I have done licensed marriage and family therapy rather than the individual approach? Because what you're talking about is there's systems involved. 30 seconds to boil down what you said in 30 seconds. It's a homework assignment. If somebody's listening and they're like, I don't know if I need it, just isolate this portion of your life, your relationship with your child. And they might be 19, they might be 25. And do this homework assignment. It'll take 30 seconds. Rate how good your relationship is on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the best thing you could ever imagine with your child. And then the scary part, ask your child what they would rate it.
Oh, wow. Wait, my gosh.
It's probably not the same number. And there's another question, but buckle up, be ready. When it's different, let's say you think it's an 8 and they say it's a 6. Let's get some encouragement. What I say is, why is it an 8 and why is it a 6 and not a 0? Because there is something good. And then ask them, what's the one thing that would make that closer? Like the 1 9, what would it make it a 7 instead of a 6? And then buckle up, because you might have your first presenting problem for your therapist.
Wow. That is being vulnerably honest. And it's asking your child to be that way. And I think I know if I'm thinking about my relationship with my 19-year-old, we are basically the same person. So we are mirrors of one another and mirrors of our experience in multiple ways. If you think about like any kind of arguments that we have or difficulties that we have going back and forth, and I really have to check myself out of ego when I'm hearing her tell me something that is frustrating for her about me or that is bothersome. I love the scale rating. That's an amazing thing, because I feel like too, that as a parent will bring you closer to your child, because first of all, you are inquiring about their feelings, right? You're asking them, where are you? And in an effort to draw closer to one another, then it's almost like it's giving them such a really beautiful gift.
And I know maybe.
Oh, yeah.
They get to actually have a say in how they feel that their relationship with you is. I work on the lower end of the spectrum here with like 5-year-olds, and perception is reality. It can be so simple of a change, but it's, parents will say, I have such a good relationship. You do, you're sacrificing, you're providing for them, all these things. And there's a disconnect between your perception of the relationship and the child's.
Yeah. Boy, that's information. I always tell my kids, like, information is powerful. It's what we do then with that. Talking to a child that is little, like a 5-year-old in the play therapy that you deal with, or I mean, we can even take it into high school too. And I mean, are you hearing them say that I don't feel heard? I don't feel like I have a voice? Is that kind of the genuine thing, the overriding theme?
I mean, the number one thing, and this is developmentally appropriate, but the number one thing that teenagers and even the young adults that sit on my couch, they say is they just don't understand me.
Oh.
It's not they aren't pushing me toward good goals. It's not they don't let me do what I want, though that's part of it sometimes. It's they do not understand me.
How do you bridge that gap then? Like, how do you tell that that person that's sitting on your couch, how do you say, okay, this is the tools that we need to use for you to get to a point where you feel understood, or you feel seen, you feel heard, all those buzzwords in the relationship. I mean, do you have to bring the parent into it in some capacity? Or is this something that you can specifically say, I can give these teens and these young adults tools to be able to help them maneuver that relationship on their own, empowered and confidently?
That's really tough. There's a lot of different scenarios, right? Sometimes the parent is involved. Sometimes the parent's not. Sometimes there is no parent. So I do see a spectrum here. First, I allow them space to grieve that. That's a lonely thing. You wanted to talk about connection. What that's saying is I don't feel connected to my parent, because if we feel understood, we feel connected. And give them a place to grieve. If I was to challenge the parent in this situation to grieve, it would be grieving the loss of what you thought your relationship was going to be, or what it used to be because they were 10 and now they're 20. Yeah. Right? So many of those times that aging young adult is beginning to embrace their own values versus your values. And it will not line up 100%. It might not even line up 50%. Yeah. And I talked about this on a podcast recently. The question was, what about my teen boy? They're so prickly. They don't want to hug me. Well, that is developmentally appropriate, that you're not wanting to cuddle with your mom. At 10 years old, what a precious moment. So as an aging parent, grieve that loss. That's a change that is going to take some time to get used to. And this is, if you're wondering, should I go to therapy? I'm 55. If you've never really talked about that grief, that could be something to talk about. Because if you can't let go of what it used to be, you can't accept the beauty of what's now. So what I should have said on the podcast was, your son is prickly, and man, what an awesome experience if they find a girl and they have a baby and you get to cuddle with your grandbaby. Yeah. Would you rather go through that process, or just continue to cuddle your son until they're 50?
Yeah, you're right. Right. Well, you brought up a really great point about when we feel understood, we feel connected, right? It's such a big deal. And I can say this as empty nesters. Like, our youngest daughter just finished her freshman year of college. So when the fall happened and our older daughter was away, she'd already moved out and graduated from college, and she's on her own, and the younger one leaves. And it's like, what is my relationship with my kids now? They don't need me like they did, but what do they need? And how can we have a communication that's open and a dialogue for me to be able to understand what she needs, where she's coming from, and still be her mom. And one of my friends was telling me this. She's like, oh, you just wait till empty nesting. You just wait. It's going to be really interesting. And I was like, okay, well, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'll have my experience. I get it. Thank you. But the thing I think that really hit me the most was trying to really let go. The grieving is a great part. Grieving that relationship as it was, but celebrating the fact that she's becoming her own person. My kids are becoming these beautiful adults that we ideally, the beauty and the pain of being a parent is like we're raising them and then we got to let them go. But we got to trust that we're doing the right thing as much as we can.
Yes. I have a metaphor I want to use, but first I want to ask you, because I do ask my clients this, it's a good moment for reflection. What would this process have looked like without nearly 30 years of counseling over that time? What would that have looked like? What would be happening right now?
Oh, we wouldn't be speaking. We wouldn't be talking. And I was just telling you before we hit the record too, that my youngest daughter and I are very similar. Like our demeanors are very similar. We rub up against each other a lot. And one thing that I learned in therapy, no matter who you're relating with, is that we are mirrors for our experience with other people. So the things that are triggering us 9 times out of 10 with somebody is a shadow thing that we need to kind of maybe do some self-reflection and introspection of our own about what that is. And it's not saying that it's right nor it's wrong. It just is. I try to tell people, like, let's not attach a good or a bad. Let's just attach a interesting. That's interesting, or that it is. I mean, but that's a great question. If without that therapy in my background and learning more and doing my work along the way, and I started therapy when I was 20 years old, Jarrod. I started deep therapy when I was 20. Between the ages of 20 and 25, when I got married, was inpatient stuff, was group stuff, was a lot of different things that I can look back now. And as I've aged, I've had to evolve through. I've had to walk through these different places and learn how to be this season of life and how to be Dawn in this season of life. But it all stems back from that time period of where I really unpacked a lot of my own stuff, and what a gift it was. Hard, yes, but I wouldn't be the person that I am now in my relationships, still working on it. I don't think I would have been intellectually able to have hard conversations with either of my kids if I hadn't had that. So
you asked what you hear most from people, what I hear most from people who are kind of figuring out, should I be doing therapy? I mean, the finances it's pricey. The cost to do the work it's exhausting. It's, oh gosh, do we have to talk about this again? Am I not over this problem? That kind of stuff. But just financially, it's, you see someone who's an excellent private practice therapist, it's $200 an hour.
Yeah.
But how much is it worth that you were able to be on speaking terms with your daughter now?
Yeah. Yeah.
$50,000 minimum.
Yeah. I mean, think about that. Your energy goes where your investment is, basically. And I think you just have to make choices about what's beneficial for you, what's beneficial for your family. Obviously, you have to make the right decision for your family and your household. However, there are avenues to be able to get assistance. That's professional help. I know this because I was seeing a minister. I didn't have the money when I started. I was not being supported by my parents. I had moved out of my house. I was in deep doo-doo. I was in a lot of trouble, right? I had a lot of stuff going on. And it was a gift of a friend that said, I have this minister. He's a Christian counselor, and I want you to go and see him just for a handful of sessions. And he's not going to charge you for the first 3. And then I'm going to pay for the next 3 because I think it's that invaluable. And I was like, okay. Yeah. I fought it tooth, tongue, and toenail to start, Jarrod. I fought it. Do you see people resisting therapy that really could use it? Even like if you have a young adult in your office and they're like, man, I'm here. I don't really know why. Somebody said I got to be here. Or do you see people when they come into your office that are like resigned to just let it go? Like, I just need this. What's that balance that you see?
A little bit of both. I work with teens. I say, and I do want to go back to this metaphor in a second, but I work with teens, and my first practicum experience was with prisoners on probation that were getting out in a drug program. And honestly, it feels like teenagers. They're sort of being forced there. They like to say they don't know why they're there. It doesn't take long to figure out, like, somebody's saying something. as to why you're here. And there's a lot of truth to that. There are also people who are just ready for a change. Mm-hmm. And the metaphor that I would give to reinforce kind of what we were talking about from a parent's perspective is that we have this overhang that's right outside of our window for the like kitchen table. And there's a bird's nest that because it's on the overhang, it stays there, and they find it every year. And so we get this awesome experience to watch these little hatchlings, and you finally see their beaks coming up above the nest, and the mom comes and feeds them. And then there's just this moment at some point you look at them and you're like, you're too big for this nest. Mm-hmm. Like it's getting a little uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And if we don't do that work as a parent to grieve a changing stage or a new, they can walk now. We don't want them to keep crawling forever. And it was just so visually like frustrating for me looking at like 3 birds that cannot fit into this nest. It would actually be awful for the mom to keep coming and feeding them, not letting go. And then they're stuck in this nest and they can't fly. And so even me as a human looking at these birds, I'm like, I'm so sad that I'm not going to be able to see birds for another year. Yeah. And that's okay. I can be sad about that.
Yeah. Ooh, let's talk about emotions in terms of the 2 different things can exist in the same soup bowl. I think I talked about that a couple months ago with somebody on the show. It was like, you can have different feelings. You can be sad and grateful at the same time. And I think if I look at the generation that you're working with, I think the social demands on so many of them are that you have to be this way, or you have to be this way. You have to fit into this box. And if you don't, you're going to be judged. You're going to be looked at incorrectly. People aren't going to understand who you are. You're going to be shunned for one reason or another. And that becomes kind of your familiar MO. Then you start going through this life of I have to be this way, and I'm not who I really need to be. How do you help the generation that you're working with on a regular basis to understand more about getting underneath that persona, that overlay that maybe social media has, maybe their friend groups have, maybe the demands of college have, the demands of I've just graduated and I'm having trouble, finding a job. Where am I now? What do I do now? What do I do now? How do you help them get underneath those people?
This is going to sound cheesy.
Okay.
I don't know. And that's a freeing thing for me as a therapist. They come and they might have like, these are the things that my parents want from me, or that's usually very obvious. My parents want me to go get a degree. They're footing the bill. They have a say in the major, or even if it's, socially, they think I should be doing this by now, or I should be doing it in this way. Any of those examples. I don't have any expectation for them.
Yeah.
I get to be one of the few people in their life who listens and has I don't go home with them. I'm here next week to talk about it, and I'm going to be excited for you, or I'll be sad with you. But I'm not like, no, this guy definitely needs to get a degree in human resource. I don't know. I don't know the answer. They're the expert on their own life. And it's sometimes probably the first relationship that they might have had, somebody entering therapy with someone who doesn't expect anything from them. When you go younger, the line is that children and maybe even adults don't change until they realize that they don't have to.
Oh, I love that. Wow. And the expert on your own life. We are the experts on our own life. That's like, okay, super vulnerable for you to say that. I don't know. But if we go back to that, you're so true that there's being a relationship with your patients that there's no expectations. I think there's a piece of that that's very freeing. If I go back to my early and really like all of my interactions with therapists that have been really invaluable in my process, I feel I feel that open space to be able to express what I need to say in whatever manner, in a very safe and supported way. And I feel like, for lack of better terms, they're going to hold the emotional vomit bucket for me. It's amazing.
Mm,
And I'm going to be able to get that out. But let's circle back to the venting. Okay. So let's tie all that back in, because you brought up a really great point. And I think that's something that we need to talk about a little bit. Venting doesn't make it, the study you were talking about, venting doesn't necessarily make it better. So where do you go when you have somebody in your office that can't get off of that cycle, that venting cycle, that has trouble realizing, these are the tools I want you to try, but they just feel stuck and they can't quite get off the venting train?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a habit, right? And it might even be that the style of what you're talking about is just coming from a family of origin. My dad used to always do this or something like that. I remember in my own therapy, there was this massive moment where he was so patient and it was so obvious. But the real work comes not from the therapist telling you something, but from you discovering it, right? So cheesy, but so true, because that's when you're actually going to be able to make that change. Is, people don't do homework that I assign. They do homework that they assign. And so there's this moment in my own therapy where I had back pain, like lower back pain, waking up 5 hours into sleeping, and I couldn't get back to sleep. It hurt so bad. I'm a 29, 30-year-old guy, active, fit, and this back pain was kicking my butt. And it was like, I don't know how many sessions. And I said to my therapist, like, do you think this has something to do with my job? No judgment. He goes, 100%. This is due to your job. Right. And so because I have that ability to be non-judgmental, that stance, I reflect back, if you're venting and you get in this spiral, a really easy way to find that out is your therapist goes, I noticed that you've been talking about this for 4 sessions in a row and you haven't chosen to do anything about it. I'm just curious what might be going on. I'm not expecting you to do something, but do you like what it feels like to keep venting? Something like that. And because you can take that non-judgmental piece, there's sometimes where it's fairly obvious what it is. And now I get to help you kind of notice that, you do seem to kind of catastrophize, right? I wonder what the reality is here. And so if you're 50 or you're 60, we've just schemas, right? We've just gotten into this way of living, way of thinking, way of seeing the world. And no wonder kids challenge that. They're younger. They don't have the schemas that we do. I say,
amen.
50.
Yeah.
And so of course that's going to rub up against it. Add a couple of you're financially responsible for them. They're still on your insurance. And man, a therapist could really help you point out some things, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you say about allowing them to discover it, allowing your patients to really uncover it on their own, because I think that's effectively where change begins. It's not from getting someone to say, this is what you need to be doing. I mean, like, where in the history of us saying to somebody, calm down when they're in an uproar, have they ever been able to calm down? Not for me. Hasn't worked for me. So it's stepping back and staying curious. I hear you saying that you're staying curious. As a therapist, you have to stay curious about what you're hearing, what you're seeing, and kind of what the reactions and responses are to the different pros that you're presenting. But even more than that, it's about encouraging your patients to be open to their process and to know and to give them kind of almost like this confidence boost of, you are the expert on your life. This is what I'm observing. And as that neutral source, as a therapist, right, the one that can hold all of the bucket of stuff, and there's no dog in the fight, right? Your place in their life, my experience with therapists, their place in my life has been to be able to hold me accountable, teach me what that looks like, and then give me those opportunities to say, this has worked for X, Y, and Z. This might be something that might work for you. If it doesn't, let's go back to the drawing board and look for something else. There's always hope and there's always an option. There's always something you can come up with. I want to say too that the familiar, when the familiar becomes uncomfortable, is usually when I've had friends that have said, all right, I'm ready to go to therapy. Like, what does that look like? Can you help me? And I think we tend to stay in that familiar place. Tell me what you're seeing out of the generation that you are counseling that is becomes so familiar that it's so hard for them to do something different because of that uncomfortable rub. Is it maybe their age is different and they feel a little bit more like, I can do that? Or maybe they feel resistant to it. I mean, as I'm thinking about 40s, 50s, and 60-year-olds, I mean, we can be entrenched in our stuff. We can be really, this is crazy, but we can be uncomfortable in our familiar and not want to change it because it's familiar, but it's not getting us any better. Do you see the younger generation being a little bit more apt to want to step out of the familiar and out of the gunk that they're maybe in?
I appreciate that the younger generation is embracing therapy as a way, a tool, a resource for sure. It can certainly be a trap to think that, oh, they do things differently. We're more mature. What I hear a lot of times is like, oh man, it was a different time growing up. It was, but human nature has not changed.
Yes.
The answer I would give to your question that it underlies a lot of this is kind of that desire to change, right? Everybody in every generation has the option to change, to make a change. And the reason it's so hard for us is because the behavior that you're doing, whatever it might be, yelling at your kid, it might be unwanted scrolling on social media, right? It might be an addictive behavior, gambling, whatever it is. That behavior is not a neutral behavior. There's pros and cons, right? And so that what you're talking about with it's uncomfortable, but I'm not ready to make a change. It's because you have not yet decided, someone hasn't decided that the pros actually outweigh the cons of making this change.
Yeah.
And so young generation, I see a lot of, the beautiful thing is they get better faster. If there's a reason to do therapy younger, it's actually really frustrating for my caseload. I have to fill my caseload all the time because they get better fast. We don't have as much baggage to address. And so that's inspiring that they come in and they can make a change. And so if there's a takeaway kind of on this topic, it can be really easy to look at the younger generation and go, they're just lazy. They're not motivated. They just want to talk about their feelings. But they are really able to make changes. And so can you.
Yeah. That's a beautiful thing that they don't have. I mean, I'm sorry for your practice. It's continually, you're graduating your patients, which is
great problem to have. Right.
Yes, it's a great problem to have. Totally. I mean, that's so poignant. They don't have the baggage to have to contend with. But I just want to go back to revisiting. And I know that you do work with adults, 40s, 50s, 60s as well. But I just want to go back to address the fact that even if you do have baggage, you're worth the work. You're worth the time and the investment to find that desire to change that you were talking about. Knowing when something is incongruent in your life and misaligned, when things are just not going the right way. And okay, it's one thing to say life is hard because life's, I always say that life is life, and you're going to have those days. But I think where I've walked and what I've learned about myself is that it's how I react or respond to those things that are coming up when I get triggered in some capacity. But the bigger things that uproot my relationships on a regular basis, the bigger things that uproot my work on a regular basis, those habitual patterns are the things that you deserve to be healed from. And I'm not talking about leaving them altogether. I'm talking about understanding yourself more. And I think that is then the biggest takeaway for me in therapy is being able to understand myself more, being able to emotionally regulate as often as I can. And when I can't, then I know that I owe the people around me a response that is respectful and apologetic, and then to do something different, do something different the next time. Talk to me a little bit about what some of your clients have taught you along the way. I mean, that's been a big takeaway for me, is that emotional regulation. What have your
Yeah.
clients, what do they give you as a therapist? Because it's a two-way street there.
Yeah. One more metaphor on this topic, right? Sometimes because we're the experts on our life, but we're also not neutral. And
Yeah.
so we think that we're right. It's like I know this excellent physical therapist, and everybody I know that goes to her, myself included, you could walk away and you're like, I didn't know that I felt so bad,
Oh,
and I didn't know it was actually possible to feel better, to regain movement. And so
mhm.
if you're 50 or 60 and you're struggling to get out of bed and without like, oh man, something happened last night, you know, that same thing applies mentally, maybe even spiritually. Like,
Yeah.
what about your purpose has just been like cramped? And 50s and 60s is just a unique time that is different in this generation,
Mhm.
as childbearing has, it's later and later. Now we have this generation of like, you're 50, 55, 60, and your parents are aging. That's
Yeah.
stressful. And then your children are leaving the house and causing all sorts of ruckus at the same time. So you're
Yeah.
actually caregiving in both directions. That hasn't happened for like most of human history.
Yeah.
I can pause there and then I can answer the question you had before. You have such good stuff. I have to keep going.
No, I love that, because I think that's so poignant. I'm really glad that you brought that position up, because you're not wrong about that. Like, in that demographic, the 40s, 50s, even into the 60s, it is caretaking for our parents. It is also still caretaking for our children that are evolving and changing. That's a really great point. And being able to adjust to both situations is challenging, really
Mm-hmm,
challenging. You have to
mm-hmm.
know a lot about yourself. Um, in terms of your own mental health, like, do you protect your own mental health when you go into something? Because I know, if we think about parents and being triggered by our kids,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And we talk about what your patients give you, what are some of the gifts that they give you? Do they also give you some opportunity for you to do your own healing too, as a
Mm-hmm.
therapist?
You asked the question. I think this is just the both sides of the coin, right? What have I learned from them?
Mhm.
I also, in the same way that there are, if you're a professional football player, you're like, wow, I could score touchdowns, and I get wrecked because it
Mhm.
hurts when somebody tackles you, right? And so when you're sitting there and you're engaging, you're present, you're understanding them. Like, my job is to truly put myself in their shoes. Some of those circumstances in life events, traumatic moments, they call it secondary trauma for a reason, right? Or
Yeah.
secondhand trauma. Um, and so, yes, what I learn is that it is never too late, and there is nothing so bad that you cannot overcome it. Like, humans are resilient. What an amazing thing. The
Yeah.
negative of that thought is, well, shoot, I cannot sit here and see them overcome. And then I'm going to sit here anxious and depressed because I have this outlook on the situation, right?
Yeah.
Oh no, I have problems in my business. I'll do that all the time. I'm like, oh, I don't have any clients. It's like, okay, great. Let's reframe this
Yeah.
and think about what's amazing. I get a little bit
Yeah.
more time with my family during this season. That's
Right.
awesome.
Right.
And so, and how do you protect? That's really tough. I mean, and the caregiving, that's on the same topic, is like, how do you
Yeah.
offer care to somebody, whether it's an adult parent or a child,
Mhm.
but not be moved by it in a way, like be empathetic, but not pursue destructive habits or behaviors to
Mm.
overcome it. I mean, I'm not perfect by any means, right? The
Mhm.
stuff
Yeah.
that was affecting me as a 10-year-old is still continues to affect me.
Mhm.
But some of that, is doing your own work. I have a therapist myself who I keep trying to, like, oh man, if I could just get to a place where I don't need a therapist every 4 to 6 weeks, max, that'd be
Yeah.
awesome. And I keep signing up for it because I listen to a lot of stuff that is really tough.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably the middle ground that's the worst is those moments where I've engaged with a client on a topic and I have a similar thing that I have to do. So the other day it came up, this would be an example, is it's accountability, right? I have to just be more accountable to my own behaviors. And so there was a parent, often this happens, and this can happen for adult children too, is we forget to play with them. We forget to actually spend time doing what they are interested in. That's just called a friendship, right? And so, you know, if you think about the content of the last 10 conversations with your teen or your adult child, how much of it was your opinion, your perspective, jokes, reliving the past, and not actually engaging, let alone doing an activity with them that would be really fun potentially. And so I was assigning my normal homework assignment, which is playing 3 times a week for 10 minutes with your child, and use, you know, adjust that however based on their age, but doing what you want to, you know, what they want to do, not what you have in mind. And I'm potty training my 2-year-old, and I realized, man, it's been 2 days and all my 2-year-old has heard from me is sit on the toilet. Like, here's your reward. You're not doing it. And eventually I'm like, I'm just punishing behavior that's not even related to potty training. And then it dawned on me yesterday, I told my client to play with their child. I haven't played with my child. No wonder they're pissed at me. They're like, you know, my dad only cares about if I put urine in this
toilet,
plastic tub, and we haven't gone on the swing set. And man, how special was it that, you know what, I got home and I was like, I need to play on the swing set for a couple minutes.
Yeah, Jarrod, that's beautiful. I mean, like, okay, I had a chill when you said that. What has been the constitutional makeup of the last 10 conversations with your teen or your young adult? I mean, when you said that, I just went.
You're bringing out the best in me because I've never said that statement before, but it's a good one, right?
It's really great. It's great. It's great because it's a compilation of kind of what the relationship looks like. If I'm selfishly looking at my relationship with my kids, that comment right there was like, oof, oh wow, what have I been talking about? Have I been talking about my opinion? Have I been listening? Have I been using less of my mouth and more of my ears? Have I been engaging on things that are important to them and understanding? And my husband will talk about this. We have this conversation all the time. I have to remind one another that in our age of 50s and 60s, we have to remember what it was like to be a teenager, a young adult, in college, leaving college. The difference of life experiences for us, you know, making our mortgage, our car note is not theirs. So tell me a little bit about the social media aspect. This is something we probably didn't talk about initially, but are you seeing a lot of that kind of thing? And I say that because I feel like if I look at my kids from a snapshot, they grew up with this phone in their hand and we didn't. And the different way to relate and interrelate with people is so different for us that my husband and I have to remind ourselves we are not in that place that they are. They're having a different experience. How do we help them with that? So specifically, how do you help your clients when it comes to phones, social media, presence in that perspective, and how, you know, maybe it's an addiction to something. Maybe it's just the rumination of looking and scrolling. We call it doom scrolling. Like instead of doing what we need to be doing or effectively what will make us better, we automatically go to this. It's this dopamine serotonin hit. And how do you help your young adult, teen, that generation and younger, even younger than teens, kind of break away from some of that? What are you seeing in your practice where that's concerned?
Yeah, that's there's not enough time to answer that question.
Yeah, it's a big one. I know.
The thought I have that kind of transitions to the cell phones is, you know, if you're evaluating the 10 conversations and then you may come away with, man, I don't really think I understand what it's like to be my child because they are growing up in an era that has some things that are just very different. Same nature, same problems, just accentuated.
Yeah.
A great question for that is, I don't know what it's like to be you. You could put in parentheses, growing up in this era. Help me understand. Can you help me understand what it's like to be you? That's a phenomenal question. And it takes a lot of ego. You got to get rid of some ego to ask it, right? Because we do think
Totally.
we know what it's like, but we don't. We did not grow up with instant and pervasive access to the internet, which has obviously all sorts of things. I'm 100% stealing this illustration, but from someone I heard yesterday. But it's like a tool, but the tool. So we've always had tools, right? Since the printing press, we have the ability to share our thoughts and ideas. But the tool was like a hammer, and now we have like a freaking forklift. We can, maybe even bigger. It's like you can do some damage with a hammer, but you could run someone over with a monster truck. You can also do really, really awesome things with a monster truck. And so we really want to like demonize the phones. And just like the wanting to make a change, there's pros and there's cons. We demonize it. And particularly for kids, we go, they're just always on their phone. We gave that phone to them. We pay that phone bill. It's on us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yes, of course, they're struggling. It is not insurmountable. I find that when you are connected to human beings, real connection, it goes down. There's the Rat City study that rats do not go for I believe the water that has heroin in it when they are connected with other rats or mice. Because they have
I didn't know
true
that.
deep
Wow,
connection.
didn't know it. Okay.
Yeah. So if they're not connected, drinking heroin all the time. If they put them in the cage with other rats, they don't go for the heroin.
Wow.
I might have gotten some of the details wrong, but the truth of it is that the connection is what we're longing for. It's why we're scrolling, is because we want to be connected to people, be seen, be understood. And so that can happen in the therapy room. And guess what? Praise God, it can happen in your relationship with your adult child.
Mic drop right there. Mic drop right there.
You said it had to be a good podcast, so
it's a great conversation. I'm loving it. I will just tell you that again, another chill moment for me. Help me understand what it's like to be you. Help me understand where you are. Help me understand what it's like to have this here. And you're right. Check the ego out. I remember having to do that with one of my kids at one point, where a therapist had suggested, not in those words, but it was another, it was a very like, you got to get out of your own way and you got to be fully present. And the light that just went off in her was like, oh, that's unusual. That's new. Okay, let's go there. And it just and I always tell people, if you can just open 1%, if you can open up 1%, that's enough to effectively make a change. If you can open up 1% with your relationship with your teen, with your young adult, with your spouse, with your coworkers, and in whatever the safe capacity is, if you can find that 1%, there's the gift of, figuring out how to discover what it is that you can choose, like seeing the different options that you have in front of you to heal, to be the best and fullest version of yourself, and to be connected. The connection, real connections.
You're missing out too.
Yeah.
It's not just them who's missing out on the connection. It's you as a parent.
Totally. Yeah. It's a two-way street. Totally a two-way street. I do appreciate what you said about the phones and demonizing them. And we do that a lot. I think there's a two-sided coin right there, because if we are creating those real connections, right, and we are really doing the work to do that, then a lot of this phone situation doesn't get in the way. It's about the real connections. But you gotta work to do the real connection. You gotta work. Gosh, what gives you hope now, where you sit in this season of life with maybe the clients that you are currently working with? what gives you hope in this generation that you are spending your time with to kind of give you this, hey, things are headed in a good direction.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this generation has got a grip on it. I know you talked about being able to help younger individuals that don't have as much baggage, and how much more quickly their
Mm-hmm.
process unfolds in the best possible way. Is there anything else to that side that you could say?
Yeah, a little further into the connection, and what I see that's exciting for this generation is that the opposite of connection is shame and isolation and loneliness. And that's fueled by and fostered by unspoken hurt and pain
Mm-hmm.
and unwanted sexual behavior and
Mm-hmm.
things that we never want to share.
Right.
It's in the darkness. We keep it hidden in the dark. And so when we bring it to light, it doesn't have as much power. And I see the younger generation on average blowing us out of the water of being willing to talk about hard things. And that's always going to be the case, I think, actually. Right. You see this in the political sphere, that I'm pretty sure they say that over the lifetime, you move toward more conservatives. I don't talk about these things all the time. I can't even say the word out loud. Conservatism.
Yeah.
And it's because youth have energy. They have ideas. They aren't limited by those things.
Yeah.
And so, of course, the youth are going to be like, no. I'm actually going to talk about my mental health because I'm a full being. And yeah, that's just, it's refreshing.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of hope for that. I mean, I feel like the same thing that I've seen with my daughters and with their friends and stuff. It's a much more open space. And maybe we have you come back on and talk about, because we didn't even get to this one, the stigma around men with therapy, and maybe teenage boys and young men, young adult men that are having, I think it's more widely okay, I put that in quotation marks, now than maybe it was before. If you think about your perspective and where you came from as a young male that decided to get that help for the things that you needed, and looking for the connection as opposed to the shame, the light versus the dark. I love that analogy as well. It's so great. But I mean, yes, the younger generation does have a whole lot more hope. Do you see that a difference with, just briefly, a difference with males versus females within your practice?
Yeah, I mostly work with the males, and that's not an accident. It's because there aren't a lot of males out there right now. That's flipped. And so I don't know if I could speak to that. But on the light dark metaphor, just know that was not, I also stole that one. So probably
well, it's
like
great. It's great. And I think the thing is that when you're stating something that you understand. And I think that's the way we learn, and that's the way we portray and give pieces of our experience to other people to learn from and share of ourselves. Right? We share the things that we honestly know and have learned about ourselves. So thank you for sharing all that. I think it's beautiful. And if we have listeners today hearing this and thinking about therapy, thinking about either how do I approach somebody that I know that needs therapy? Sure. How do I step out of this? Oh my gosh, my teen is struggling. How do I approach them, or my young adult, or my college junior or senior? What do I say to them that they can receive, that I'm concerned for them, and I think this would be of value to them?
Couple thoughts. Maybe first ask yourself, should I be the one in therapy? Or is it a joint venture? Should we both be in therapy? Perfect. Probably not a good look to say my kid needs to go to therapy because it's all about what the problem that they have.
Right.
It's intergenerational trauma, right? And so do your own work. That might not be straight therapy. Pastors can help with this.
Yeah. Wise
counseling friends. But also maybe there's something that a therapist could help you with. I always tell people, it's daunting to go, oh man, do I have to spend the next 30 years in therapy? Go twice. Yeah. Go one time. Email a couple of people. Find a counselor that you kind of know of that you couldn't go see, and ask them what they think.
Right.
That's the best way to get a referral is you ask a counselor that you can't see because you know them and you go,
Yeah.
who would you see if you could? And they will have 3 names, 100%. So
Yeah.
do your own work and know that maybe part of the process is going to be multiple people in therapy and
Right.
not forever. Maybe, I like to tell people that research on anxiety for CBT says 5 to 8 sessions and you start seeing results. You don't have to go 100 times to get some results. Just like the gym, you're going to feel a little better if you start going to the gym, right? To
Yes.
get where you ultimately want to be, that could be a couple of years. That's okay. But you can get some good stuff now. For resources, and for children, I recommend for 20 somethings. Meg J has a great book called The Defining Decade. It's maybe a little older, but the truths are phenomenal on just your 20s are important. There's a couple of reasons that we know that what happens in your 20s will define the rest of your life, not just your childhood. I believe in relationships and with wages. That there's a pretty good research on, like, if you make it, the change in your income between 20 and 30 is what she says determines the trajectory of how much your wages will increase 30 and above. Generally, if you're waiting tables in your 20s because you maybe are putting off what you might know is maybe harder. I don't know. I don't want to judge anybody's work right now, but like she argues that if you're not making strides, you might not after your 30s when life maybe even gets complicated in some ways.
Right.
So Defining Decade, look it up. It's great. I tell college students, so if you have a college student, the most colleges have a counseling center on campus. The embarrassing thing you asked early on is where was I exposed to therapy? Actually, was 3 physical doors down from the therapy office. It was my next door neighbor, the hall door, the counseling office door that didn't open, and then the counseling office.
Oh, wow.
And I just didn't know that someone could go to a counselor to talk about the things I was struggling with. Because sometimes we think that, oh, well, it's not that bad. I didn't see a murder. Okay, well, that one might be this, but you've experienced 30 years of pain in a relationship with your parent. That's a big deal. And so anyway, counseling at school, at universities, you're paying for it already. And usually they have like a short term where you can see them for 5 to 8, I wonder why, sessions per semester for free. And then when you exhaust that limit, they can point you in the right direction. So college students, if you have one or if you are one, take advantage of that resource. And then the last thing that I would say in terms of what I would tell somebody is, particularly for problems that are shameful, shame-based, isolation fueled. I think of unwanted sexual behavior. I think of gambling. I think of a couple of others. Particularly if, sharing with your parents isn't usually your first step, especially if that relationship could be strained. But as a parent, you can preemptively let them know because you're going to be the one in their life for the long haul. And so if I could give you like a line, it would be, hey, I don't know what you're dealing with right now, or maybe you do. And I know that this has been a part of your story. In the future, blank check. If you have problems with something that is shameful and you don't even want to tell me the details, but you know that therapy could help, I'll write the check. No further questions, right? So this particularly comes from unwanted sexual behavior, porn addiction, whatever it might be, right? Like a lot of males don't want to tell their mom that they're struggling with that.
For sure.
But you can preemptively say, hey, I heard this on a podcast. I don't know if you struggle with it. If you ever do, if it becomes an issue, you let me know. I won't ask you a single question. And if you have the resources, I can help you pay for that.
Yeah. You've planted the seed. You've let them know that it's okay. And we don't have to go deep in the conversation, but that you understand. There's a piece of you that understands and that is willing to go there with you. Yeah. I'm going to be here. I'm going to be here. Oh, Jarrod, how can people connect with you if they're interested in talking to you more about what a session with you might look like, be it virtually or if they live in the area that you're
Mhm.
in? Tell me a little bit about how people can get in contact with you and get
Yeah,
more information of your practice.
absolutely. JarrodHoffman.com is my website. I am also on LinkedIn. That's the social media that I feel like balances out. Like I'm a little jealous. It's like 10% of the time. Um, And so I'm on LinkedIn. I have a newsletter on my website. If you feel like some of the content that I do share is something
Mhm.
that you want to see, I have a quiz, and this I made very shareable. So you don't even have to put your information on. And the question is the quiz answers, does my teen need therapy? Right? Is what I'm
Oof.
seeing developmentally appropriate? And it's just like the ups and downs of teenage years? Or is it actually something deeper? And so I made a quiz on that. And those are the things that come to my mind.
That's so good because that's answering so many questions right there. And it's a place where you can go to as a parent and you don't have to let everybody in the world know that, oh, this is what
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at.
Mm-hmm.
It's very private and it's something that can answer a lot of those questions or at least open the door to
Mm-hmm.
having the conversation, which I think is the biggest takeaway that I'm going to have from our conversation. So many wonderful nuggets that you have just dropped here in this conversation, Jarrod. I really appreciate it as a mom,
Mm-hmm.
just as a general human being, like that connection that therapy can create for all of us and the healing that can go into it when we're willing to do the work and we are in a place that's supportive, an environment that fosters that understanding and that no expectations. It's amazing what that can do. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you for the work that you do. I appreciate it. And I think it's been a delight having this conversation today. And
Same,
I
same.
hope, yeah. Oh, thanks. I hope the listeners can walk away with maybe a little piece of information they didn't know about therapy, or maybe even do a nice connection with you and say, hey, I've got X, Y, or Z happening. Can you lead me in the right direction? So
Mm-hmm.
that's my hope
Please
for
do.
today.
Please do. My email's
Yeah.
Jarrod@jarrodhoffman.com.
Perfect. Oh man, Jarrod, thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, a great rest of your week with your family, and let's go Elvis, Graceland, Memphis. Yeah. There you go.
Taking care of business. That's
TCB,
what we've
man. There
been
we go.
doing.
We did it today. Absolutely. Thanks, Jarrod.
Yeah. Thanks, Dawn.